Talk to you in just a minute. Thank you very much for listening. Welcome back, everyone. This is Radio Free Market, and I am your host, Michael McKay. Zoe, I'm turning it over to you. Go ahead.
All right. Dr. Cleveland, can you tell us more about where you were cut off, why communal property tends to break down?
Sure. Well, I mean, think of it for a moment. If you're trying to hold something communally, well, you certainly can't use it communally. If I was using the example, this was about a year or so ago, the college acquired, it was like 100 bicycles to use communally. Well, the problem is if nobody owns it, nobody has any interest in taking care of it. And so students would do things like this. You couldn't know that the bike you rode to class would still be there after you got out of class. So one of the things that students did is they would take the seats off and take them into class with them. Or they'd ride them all, they would ride them downhill, but nobody would want to ride them back uphill, so all the bikes would collect downhill and at the bottom of a hill somewhere and just sit there. And, of course, they were all left out in the rain. And I think one young man was expelled from the college for co-opting ownership to the bikes and reselling them in the open market. So,
did he get a job at the Federal Reserve, do you think?
That's right. Well, maybe he's being groomed for that. We don't know. So. But anyway, the few remaining bikes we just watched rust away within like 6 months, and I haven't seen one in well over a year now. So I think they're all have vanished permanently from the college scene. It doesn't work that way. Only one person can use property, and so when we have ownership of it, we'll take care of it, and we have an incentive to. Moreover,
please go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, actually, I was going to bridge to another point you were just saying.
Okay.
Moreover, okay. Let me. I'm sorry I interrupted you on that. I wanted to go into yet another point here about how not only is it the private property that we all have, but the diversity that we bring to the table that creates the big opportunity of an economy.
Yeah, it certainly is true. I mean, one of the things I do with my students is I'll pick out a student and ask them if it's after lunch, I'll say, well, did you have lunch today? And they'll say, well, yeah. So I'll say, well, what'd you have? And they'll say, well, I had a Subway sandwich or something to that effect. And so, then I'll say, okay, now, if you had to produce that sandwich yourself without any help whatsoever from anyone else, how long would it take you? And when I force the issue, I say, well, do you know what bread is, how to make bread? You know what it comes from? You're going to have to go grow wheat, mill it into flour, bake the bread, and all of these.
To mill it into flour.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to do all of these things yourself before to get a sandwich. And so once I get them to think that way, I say, okay, now how long would it take you to make one? And it would be years and years worth of labor to get it. You would starve to death first.
Right.
And then I'll say, okay, now, but you went and bought that, right? And I said, well, how much did you pay? Well, $5. And I'll ask them if they have a job, which most of them have had a job or, making at least around $10 an hour. And so I'll point out, really for half an hour's worth of labor, you were able to get that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that means that trade allows you to live far better than you'd ever live otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's a miracle that you compensated everybody, and literally thousands and thousands of people and their labor were involved in the production of that sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the ingredients that went into it. And for $5, you compensated everybody, and they did it voluntarily. They didn't even have to know you. Or they didn't have to really care for you or anything else, but they had to serve your interests. Mm-hmm. And so really, when you think about it, when we look around at ourselves and we find out, well, we're unique, we're different, we have different talents and different abilities and skills, and when we concentrate our time and our use in what we're really good at, and we trade amongst ourselves, we live so much better than we ever would otherwise. And if we'll only focus on that, on production and trade, then we'll all be better off. We'll make ourselves better off, and we'll be creating wealth steadily in time, instead of trying to rely on theft and trying to use government as our instrument of taking what we want from somebody else.
You say that what complicates the entire trading process is the invention of money. How does it complicate the trading process?
Well, it takes people's focus off of what's really going on, because what money is just a means of exchange. It's a means by which we indirectly trade with one another. Mm-hmm. And so, once again, here's the thing with my students that I'll do. I'll point out barter is very difficult sometimes. And I have them imagine, what if I'm going to go to the grocery store this weekend to try to get groceries, and I go in and I find the store manager and I'll say to him, well, sir or ma'am, I'll gladly lecture you today about economic principles for a certain quantity of food. Well, that may be a tough sell, because they would have to really be interested in the economic principles at this point, and they may or may not be. And we'd have to have a double coincidence of want.
Well, we're going to interrupt you right here on this term, double coincidence of wants. I want to come back to that right after the break. Unfortunately, we're flying through this show here. I want to cover so much more territory with you. This is Radio Free Market. You're listening to Dr. Paul Cleveland, and we'll be right back right after the break. Stay with us.